What a blessing it is for this Duke basketball team to have 5 returners on next year's squad. In a day and age where college basketball has so much roster shakeup, the Blue Devils have consistency, and that's huge.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It is so great to have you here with us today on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. A new month has arrived, and we've got great coverage for you here in the world of Locked On Blue Devils. On today's show, Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated back with us once again, as he is each and every week. We'll be talking all things Duke basketball with 5 key returners set to make an impact on next year's squad. I can't wait to break all that down with Conor as he joins us on today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. On the podcast app, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. The algorithms love those written reviews, and that helps us be found. And I appreciate people spreading the word about Locked On Blue Devils. You can also watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video on YouTube, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We're on X at LO_Blue Devils. All right, without further ado, Conor O'Neill joins us on the program here today. July has arrived, Conor. I hope you're doing well, my friend.
Not bad. I need a haircut and a shave, but otherwise, we'll get those taken care of and launch into July.
Yeah, a few weeks away from ACC kickoff and some of the norms. So we're still enjoying the summertime and letting hair grow and do all the things as it's a great time of year, and glad you're here with me today. So I want to talk a little bit about these returners that Duke has coming back. Now that the draft has kind of come and gone, we're starting kind of day by day. We haven't quite got the videos yet from Duke, so to speak, but we're seeing pictures of the guys in the gym working out and whatnot. So I do want to kind of focus on the guys that are returning. So and we're looking for a little bit of content here, Conor. We're seeing them in Duke practice gear. We've got that to cheer for now.
There was a probably on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, a level 6-meter panic when Pat Ngongba was shown in a boot a few weeks back. And I think we're up to 3 or 4 different photos that have shown him since then without a boot. So
right. Yeah.
That's always a big development to note.
Off-season injury panic meters, man, when we're just basing it off of pictures that we see, no context whatsoever. You got to love it. Well, Pat Ngongba is one of those 5 returners that we're going to get to talk about throughout the course of our conversation here today. I just want to start big picture, man, and I kind of touched on it, teasing it in the open, man. But, we don't have the numbers in terms of how many teams have 5 scholarship players returning from last year. I can't imagine it's very many, considering all the teams that suffered attrition and loss in the transfer portal, man. I mean, this is just kind of uncharacteristic, and Duke standing in a world of their own with so many guys coming back on the squad.
Yeah, sometimes, it's probably best to think of Duke not in a box of anything else that includes the vast majority of college basketball teams. I don't know if they stand completely alone. Your typical blue bloods also probably have some space in that area, but
sure.
Yeah, I mean, how many other teams can go to a Final Four and return 5 players to varying levels of impact who helped them get there? Not just guys that were riding on the end of the bench and not playing key roles. I mean, Maliq Brown and Pat Ngongba both played significant roles behind Common Malawach. Isaiah Evans, we've seen what he looks like at his best. And then Caleb Foster had arguably one of his best games all around, 4 games in the Final Four loss. So it's there's a line to toe here. You know how much I love straddling those lines and towing both sides. Sometimes I do think you need to clean house a little bit. And I think, like, I'm not going to stop giving John Shire credit for what happened going from the second team he had to the third one, because that roster did need to be purged a little bit. Like, there were some pieces that would not have fit with Cooper Flagg and the freshman class that was coming in. And that's why they weren't on the team anymore. But when you can return guys to this level, and when you think that the pieces can fit and they can develop into the players that you need them to be, that's all the more power in this day and age of college basketball to be able to keep them in the program.
Without a doubt. I mean, and what they're going to be able to do in terms of building on that camaraderie and showing it to the freshman class, I think it's going to be huge. I think it's interesting you noted, hey, it's a Final Four team and all these guys coming back, because I'm sitting here thinking about the other three teams that were in the Final Four with Duke. And for every single one of them, I could give you Denzel Aberdeen for Florida that went into the transfer portal. You know, Chad Baker-Mazara for Auburn is going to be playing college basketball somehow, some way with another year of eligibility, but not at Auburn, to play at USC this upcoming year. Arsenio is not going to be playing for Houston, you know, the team that knocked out Duke in the portal. Like, all of those teams saw players exit, and Duke, meanwhile, brings everybody back other than the guys that had left for the draft. And being able to build on that, I think is certainly going to be huge. And in terms of, you know, trying to build the on-the-court chemistry, it's not as big of a hurdle because they've already got that experience in games themselves.
Yeah, and isn't that exactly the sweet spot where you want your program to be? I mean, you can hand wring and regret on behalf of a player like Tyrese Proctor that he had another year of eligibility and he's he's still a draft pick, but he's only the 49th player taken. There's a whole nother discussion about whether he was ready to be a pro. It is basically the beginning and end of that conversation. But where you want your program to be is you're either putting players in the pros or you're bringing them back, and you're developing them. It's not going to be like that every year. I just mentioned, like, the offseason that Duke had last year. It was not like that.
Sure. But
this is where you want to be. Like, this is the sweet spot of our players are either getting drafted or they're coming back to be better. And they're coming back to be competitive, and we can go into the chase of six, and then we want six, like all the chants from the crazies, that kind of thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, this is where you want your program to be. And that's kind of, you know, I'm going to want to sit here and say that Duke is the envy of every single college basketball fan, because you either love or hate Duke.
Right.
But there are, I think, enough level-headed people to look at it and say, well, yeah, that'd be nice. Like, how much do you think Carolina would like to have Ian Jackson on this year's roster?
Yep.
For example.
Absolutely. And Duke has their guys back. So excited to talk Caleb Foster, Isaiah Evans, Maliq Brown, Pat Ngongba, Darren Harris. All of those players will make a big impact for the Blue Devils this upcoming season. We'll start to break down their individual games and more when we return here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you are all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every single game more exciting. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and I could think of no better place for you to get involved and get in on the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach this summer. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes every regular season game feel like a must-watch event. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or riding a bet into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. Are you new to FanDuel? Well, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Once again, you can look at some of the MLB action, some over-under totals. We've got Braves and Angels at 9.5 runs scored. Yankees, Blue Jays, 7.5 is the line there. Conor O'Neill's Orioles, 7.5. They're in line with the Rangers. Get all the action and more over at FanDuel. Again, bet just $5, $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel.com, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep going. Connor's here with me as we go through summertime. We've got football media days in a few weeks. We'll have basketball shortly thereafter. But, of course, we love talking Duke basketball every single day here on the show. So I want to talk about these guys coming back for the Blue Devils. And the lead guy that I do want to start the conversation with numerically comes first as well with Caleb Foster wearing that number 1 jersey. What in the world will his junior season look like, man? Up and down. Played like 25 minutes a game as a freshman, only 14 minutes a game last year. And that's a big offseason question is, how long are we going to see him out on the floor throughout games? What kind of an impact will he be able to make while he's playing?
Yeah, I think you kind of start right there with the consistency of it. Now, I don't want to say some of it will he was in control to a degree of his minutes and usage last year. It's not his fault that Sion James was so much of a better fit for what
Right.
Duke wanted to do. That took away his minutes. I think we all know that. We don't have to make any excuses about that. But what I look at it is, I think the first game he came off the bench, it was Auburn, and he had a double-digit scoring game. We did not see that type of impact from him often enough. And that's why his minutes dwindled as the year went on, wound up being the senior night DNP against Wake that we all thought was going to be the last time we ever see him in Cameron. And then all of a sudden he surges to end the season and gives them meaningful minutes off the bench, sparked some big plays in the win at Carolina. So it's like a column I wrote a couple weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago at this point. The version of Caleb Foster that Duke saw at the end of the year, that like desperate, diving on the floor for loose balls, getting deflections, boxing out, rebounding, all that stuff that we saw when we all thought that his Duke career was like at an end, and we all kind of thought he was just kind of showcasing himself for a portal entry.
Right.
That's the version that Duke needs for an entire season and consistently. And if they get that, like, that's a junior guard who is a leader. It's a good shooter. And more importantly, like, that's a guy that can attack you in multiple ways. Like, can attack you off pick and rolls, can be a spot up shooter at times. He's a 6'5" guard who's all kinds of wiry and stringy. He should be a good defender. Now, you're not thinking that he's going to be Sion and able to match up, and the switchability that made Sion so valuable was he could be switched onto a 5 and they could put him in the low post, and you have no concern about him getting pushed around in there because he's 225 pounds of pure muscle. I don't know that we expect Caleb Foster to come back from the offseason and look like that, but he should be a really good defender, and give you all of those things that we saw toward the end of the season.
Yeah, he played 13 minutes in the Final Four game against Houston, and I kept saying, looking back on it, like, when he came in, the pace felt different. He finished with 4 rebounds. I thought it was the most aggressive rebounding that we've ever seen from Foster, in a great way to get the ball, push tempo, get out, and be ready to run. So if he's able to bring that level of intensity throughout the course of all these games, I think Duke is going to be in a good spot, because we do forget how talented this guy is, right? And I really loved in the draft process hearing all of the Duke players talk about how excited they were for Caleb Foster to get this third year, and I know that they're going to do that. They're going to hype up their teammates, but I respect what they think, right? I mean, I can think of Con Knipple going on the Bill Simmons podcast, and Bill wanting to ask about Caleb himself since he had played out in LA. And Con's like, I promise you, Caleb Foster's ready to go. And he's a really impressive basketball player.
Yeah, I've gotten the sense too. They don't play favorites in the locker room, but I do think he has a lot more respect within the Duke locker room than people might just assume based on playing time and based on maybe what you see from facial expressions and body language on the court in games. Like that's never going to tell the full story of these guys. I do think he has a lot of fans that are either still in the locker room or just left the locker room. Yeah,
I'm one of them. I'm not in the locker room, but definitely a Caleb Foster fan, excited to see what he's going to be able to do this year. I will say, the 3-point shot has come and gone a little bit. I think the volume was there as a freshman. It just this past year, when you're so up and down, confidence obviously is wavering. That's going to be something to watch. But what's so interesting, you look at the numbers from this past year as well. Caleb Foster, 68.8% from the free throw line. Tyrese Proctor struggled from the free throw line. Con Knipple was amazing. Cooper Flagg was a really good free throw shooter as well. Yeah. I don't know what it is, though, about some of these guards, man, Connor, where it's, hey, we need you to knock them down.
Yeah, so I know that with Caleb, I went and caught up with him in his junior season of high school at Oak Hill. And his coach, the now retired Steve Smith, who was there for, I think, 20 to 30 years, is a legend in the high school coaching ranks.
Right.
He told me about his shot breaking that year. Like he shot great as a sophomore at Oak Hill, which I think was his first year up there. And then his junior season, at some point, maybe the summer between his sophomore and junior year or early in his junior year, his shot just kind of broke, for lack of a better term. And basketball people know that happens from time to time. And how he put it back together is, I think, still how he shoots the ball. And when I went up there, it was later in the season, and he was shooting these moon balls. And it's kind of like, man, it looks really good and it looks really pretty when it goes in, but when they miss by a lot.
Right.
And when you're off by a lot. And so
what I'm thinking about, like Moonball is, I mean, that thing, he does have a lot of arc in those jumpers.
I think the fix has to find a little more of a medium between, or a median, I guess. I mean, median. You got to find a median between where he was shooting before and what his fix has been. And I'm sure he's worked on it. Like it's not like he's purposefully shooting the same way that he has for 3 or 4 years. I just think that there will be a little more consistency to be found with more of a regular arc on his shots.
Yep. And I've been full faith that that's going to happen, and we'll see what Caleb Foster is able to do. Okay, so numerically, number 3, Isaiah Evans, comes up next as we look at the big year he's set to have. And we have been able to talk about him a whole lot because he's the big returner for the Duke team. Everybody is really excited about what he's going to be able to do. He's already a first-round kind of selection in Gavoni's way too early mock drafts over at ESPN and Draft Express. Like, a lot of people are buying all the Isaiah Evans stock. I want to see more of the offensive game that he's got beyond just the 3-point shooting. But man, what a weapon it is that Duke gets Slim back for another year.
Yeah, that's the key here. You mentioned it. I mean, we know he can get hot in an instant and pour in 3 or 4 threes in a couple minutes. We have to see a little more. Like we have to see some diversity in there. We have to see some drives to the bucket. We have to see some pull-ups. Look, it's a credit to him that I'm not even sitting here saying, well, he has to get better defensively, because I think he really did improve defensively a ton in the course of last season. So I think as long as that growth either continues a little bit or a lot, of course, I look at Caleb Foster and look at his wingspan and height and width and think that he could be a really good defender. And then Isaiah Evans is a little bit bigger and probably has a little bit longer of a wingspan, and he's out on the wing. But yeah, offensively, don't get sucked into thinking that he's just going to shoot 10 threes a game and make anywhere from 2 to 7 of them. I think the balance, the shot diet should improve. I don't have any doubts that it will. It's not like I know any secrets. If you watched Isaiah Evans last year, you know that he's got to be able to put the ball on the floor a little bit better, get around people instead of just constantly shooting over them. And I think that happens, and it results in a much better player.
Without a doubt. And yeah, you look at the shot diet, again, 82% of those shots coming from 3-point range. So you move that number just a tad to fewer attempts and be able to show more from the offensive game. I love his dunks in transition, and hopefully he can become kind of a vertical threat for Duke as well, using his athletic and lengthy frame to his advantage. So really, really fired up for Showtime Slim and what we can expect from him this upcoming season. All right, got a few more guys to highlight before our show comes to a close today, but we're due for a break. We'll be back in just a moment. Let me tell you this, Locked On Blue Devils, thank you so much for making us your first listen and your first watch. For your second listen today, do yourself a favor and go check out the Portal Show with Locked On's very own Brian Smith, who's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. You can be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Also, be sure to check out Locked On College Basketball. Andy Patton and Isaac Shade do a remarkable job keeping you updated on everything going on in our favorite sport. And there's tons of Duke basketball conversation that you want to listen to and be a part of. Thank you for watching us each and every day here at Locked On Blue Devils. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comment down below if you're an everydayer. I love seeing the community build each and every day. And we'll get back to our program right now with Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. All right, we're talking about these returners, man. Numerically, we've got a few coming up here that are one of ones because Duke had never had these non-traditional college basketball numbers prior to this past season. When the NCAA allows it, Duke actually waited a year before they threw out some of these numbers. But we've got number 6, Maliq Brown. What a jersey number. But what a big returner he's going to be for the Blue Devils.
Yeah. I don't think it was ever officially announced, but had a surgery after the season ended. There were several photos of him in a sling. I think the most recent ones have shown him out of the sling already.
Right.
We know about the shoulder that popped out a couple times. We got plenty of dialogue about that in March and into April. So I don't know that we need to relitigate any of that. I mean, I kind of expect him to score the ball more. I think that there's going to be a push for that from the staff. I don't know if you're going to see him score 20 at any point, but I think getting into the 8 to 12 point range more often than not, I think that's going to help him a ton. It's going to help Duke a ton. And we saw a couple 3-pointers at Carolina in that regular season finale. And I think that was kind of a peek at what they want him to do.
Without a doubt, if you're able to add a little bit more to the offensive game for Maliq, I think that's an added bonus for this team. I'm really curious to see the impact that he and both Patrick Ngongba, who we'll get to in just a moment here, can have on Cameron Boozer on the interior there. Really, I think when you look at it, if you get more from Maliq Brown, amazing. You need it. You want him to be able to take that step forward. But when he's out there on the floor, it's just simple. Do what you do best. Impact winning on the defensive end of the floor. Get into passing lanes. Deflections aren't this official charted statistic in college hoops or in basketball, but it absolutely should be because you'd see his name at the top.
Yeah. Gosh, that is kind of the one area of any of the 5 players that we're talking about that I would say that has to just be kind of remain modus operandi, for
Don't
lack
touch
of
it.
but yeah, defensively, just do exactly what you did when you were healthy and when you were out there playing basically with 1.5 shoulders. Duke would love to sign on the dotted line for that right now.
Make it happen. Let's get Maliq Brown back for this Duke team and be able to make that big of an impact on the defensive end of the floor. All right, let's keep this thing going, Connor. We've got another kind of one-of-one jersey number for the squad here for Duke. Darren Harris wore number 8 for the Blue Devils this year, and we really didn't see him a whole lot throughout the course of the year. A lot of people thought maybe the transfer portal is the way for him to go. I'm a fan of the fact that he remained committed and put some work in, and I do think he's going to get to play a much larger role this year.
Yeah, it was funny. For a non-related story, I talked to him, the story that I did from the Final Four about how John Shire coaches his guys really hard and has honest conversations. It had an anecdote from Derek Lively in there from 2 years ago about some rather non-choice words that John Shire had for him at one point during that season. And Darren told me like he wanted to be coached hard. He's been coached hard all his life by coaches, his dad, everybody. And I can't remember the exact quote, but the one thing that stuck with me and really echoed when he announced he was coming back was if you sign up to get coached that way, and if you run from it, then you probably shouldn't have been at Duke in the first place. And so that really resonated with me. He clearly, like by nature of him coming back, that was a little peek into his psyche of just because it didn't go, like he didn't have this big impact as a freshman on a pretty stacked team and a team that, like, look at the guys that played in front of him at guard positions. One of them was the 4th overall pick. 2 of them were older guys that were 2nd round picks. And Isaiah Evans could get hot in an instant and spark arguably what wound up being the biggest win of the season against Auburn. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Darren Harris is in for a big sophomore year. People forget how accomplished and how good he was in high school and in the AAU circuit. I think we'll get reminders of that this season.
I do it way too much. People that have been listening to the show for years and years are going to throw Jaden Shute kind of my way as the most recent example of this, and that's totally fair and fine. But it is just a reminder that when you're playing at a school like Duke and you see all these recruiting rankings, a player like Darren Harris would be playing immediately anywhere else in the country if he chose to go that route, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm so excited for him to get a larger role and opportunity this upcoming year. All right, one more guy to go before we get out of here today on the program, Connor. And that's Big Pat, number 21, Pat Ngongba II, sophomore year coming up, fan favorite down the stretch because he needed to be thrown in spots when Maliq Brown was battling injury, games that Duke was in foul trouble in the front court with Flagg and Malawach. And boy, oh boy, Big Pat's got a big year coming up, man.
Yeah, I think Duke doesn't have a trophy in the trophy case without Big Pat, and that's the ACC championship one.
Yeah.
The way he played in Charlotte was fantastic. And I'm in the camp that feels like the minority camp where I think Maliq Brown will play a little more than Pat. I think Maliq Brown will start the season as the starter. But if they wind up splitting time, if they wind up splitting starts, even if Pat winds up playing more minutes on average, would not shock me in the slightest. The potential is just so there, so great. The footwork and the soft hands. I mean, you can't teach that into a big man. They're either born with it or born without it. And he's got it. And I think I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this, because I think the most pleasant surprise about Duke's season last year was Con Knippel being as good as he was. I mean, At this time last year, we would have been laughing at each other if the other one had said Con Knippel is going to be the number 4 pick in the draft. Even with like the camp footage of him scoring on RJ Davis and, you know,
1,000,000%.
trying to hedge, like, oh, he might be a little bit like, we didn't see that coming. But I think once you get into the season, I think if you take it from a just like November to April view, Pat Ngongba was the most pleasant surprise. Like, that was the best part, because I mean, at one point I didn't know if he would play.
Right.
I think Duke had some doubt at that point. So the fact that he was able to play and have the impact that he had, and to make it look like he's kind of just scratching the surface of what he could be. Yeah, there's a really talented player in there that is not too far away from being realized.
And he's one of 5 big-time returners that Duke's going to have for this upcoming season. A big reason why a lot of people are going to be high on this team going into the year. And this hasn't even mentioned another top-level recruiting class coming in that are set to make a big mark for the Blue Devils this upcoming year. Super excited to kind of get closer to basketball season and having more of these conversations with you, Connor. Do us a favor. Tell people how they can find your work and support you.
Yeah, so that's a new thing. It's July 1st, and the transition is ongoing with Rivals going over to On3. The new address of the site is on3.com/sites/devils-illustrated. And then there's another / in there. So I think if you still type in duke.rivals.com, it will redirect you. So if that's saved in your bookmarks, then keep just clicking on that, and I think you'll wind up on that new page right now. But yeah, head on over there, sign up, subscribe, engage, all that good stuff would really help me out.
All right, man. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for being here today, Connor.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill joining us here on today's episode of Locked on Blue Devils. Thanks so much for your support, always with us here on the program today. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review on the Apple Podcast platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.